Someone commented on one of my TikTok videos recently asking what they could do if the other parent was not contributing their share of the medical expense bill for the child or children. And that's a really good question. So, if you have a current child support order, the order should have some language as to how the parents are going to split unreimbursed medical expenses. So, those are expenses that are not covered by your health insurance provider. So, let's say that you take your child to the dentist and there is a $100 bill after insurance pays their portion. And your child support order says that the parties are to pay unreimbursed medical expenses, with mother paying 70% and father paying 30%. Mother would be responsible for $70 of the $100 bill, and father would be responsible for $30 of the $100 bill. Now, oftentimes, one parent is taking the child to the doctor, and the doctor is not going to issue two separate invoices to mom for 70 and to dad for 30. So, most times, one parent, whoever took the child to the doctor or whoever receives the invoice, is going to pay that invoice. Now, let's just say that in this example, mom pays the $100 invoice, and now she has a right to reimbursement from father for his 30% or his $30 of that $100 bill. How is mom supposed to go about getting that? In the most straightforward way, you think that you could just send the invoice to the other parent, let them know, hey, I paid this, your portion is $30, please reimburse me. And your child support order should have something to that effect in the order. If it does not, you are still entitled to reimbursement. A really good child support order is going to have a process in place as to how you go about seeking that reimbursement. So, for example, your child support order could say something as reimbursement to the paying parent shall be made within 30 days of receiving copy of proof of payment. So soon after you receive that invoice, you should be sending it to the other parent. Don't wait 60, 90, 180 days. After you receive that invoice, send it to the other parent so as not to bill them for medical expenses that occurred 8, 10, 12 months prior to. That's when parents are going to start having issues and might say, hey, I didn't even know about this. Where is this coming from? And might start asking more questions. So promptly send the invoice once you have it. Now, a really good child support order will also include language that after the paying parent sends the invoice, the party which owes the reimbursement is going to provide that payment within so many days. It's important to have a deadline for the other parent to pay or to reimburse the expense after you've already paid. Otherwise, you're going to have to continue to make efforts to collect it from them. You receive the invoice, you send it to the other parent, give them a time period in which they can pay it. If they've not paid you, you need to save that invoice and any other invoice that they have not paid for unreimbursed medical expenses and keep a tally. You can go back and enforce a child support order if you've not received your share of the medical expense reimbursement. Some child support orders, and this is important, will include language that says if you did not send the invoice within 180 days or some other deadline, and it's beyond the 180-day deadline, you don't have a right to seek reimbursement anymore. So some child support orders will impose a deadline. In other words, you can't send an invoice that is a year old. So if you want to check your child support order to make sure that if there is a deadline for you to make a request for reimbursement, you're complying with that deadline. If there are various expenses that the other parent has not reimbursed you for, keep track of it. You may not feel like going back to court over $150 medical expenses, but in the future, if you do ever end up back in court, or let's say that there are a huge amount of expenses that they haven't paid, or you're modifying child support, you're going to want to refer to that. And if you can show, here is a tally of all of the expenses and the date that they were invoiced to the other parent, you can show this is how much they owe me and seek reimbursement for that. So it's important to keep track of these expenses if they are not paying.